This is the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast with your host, Jason Peck. Yeah, boy! Welcome in to the 2023 edition of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast. I am here. I'm calling this year's editions the baby editions. We're cutting them down, mainly due to the fact that halfway through the year, I'm going to be having a baby. So, we're going to cut down the lengths of these podcasts. We're going to be quick and to the point. However, we will still be having drops. We will still be having the good times. Unfortunately, probably not as many guest spots because I'm doing these on Friday afternoons because I have half days on Fridays. So that works out best for me. But I know you guys want the content. I know you guys are excited about, my reactions. Hopefully excited about my reactions to what's been going on in the league. So we will do that and have fun doing it. So welcome in to the 2023, the week 1 edition of the 2023 Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast. This is so exciting. This is the most exciting. But we're going to start this off, as always, on a sad note. We had some unfortunate injuries this week. Aaron Rodgers on Monday Night Football. 4 snaps into his debut with the Jets. It's so sad. Along with him, J.K. Dobbins suffered an Achilles injury, so both of them kind of had, I'd say, a rough week 1. Yeah, it's a sad time. I would have loved to see. I mean, obviously, I have Garrett Wilson on my fantasy team, so I would have loved to have Aaron Rodgers there the whole year for that. But also, I just would have liked to. I hate that Rodgers left, but I think it was the right move for both him and the Packers. They both seemed kind of unhappy with each other going into this year, and I was kind of excited to see what the Jets could do with Aaron Rodgers, and I think they could have been good. But now they have Zach Wilson, and I have Aaron Rodgers less Garrett Wilson. So other than that, the injuries weren't too bad this week. We did have, in general, I feel like there's way more hamstring injuries. And that probably has to do with the fact that it's the first week of the NFL, and nobody really played their starters in the preseason. So there's a lot of hamstring injuries as soon as people start going full speed throughout the season. Hopefully, those get better. But I know there are 3 Packers players, 3 leaders on the offense, all have hamstring injuries: Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and Aaron Jones. I know there were more than just them. I know half of the tight ends had hamstring injuries. I know Darren Waller had a hamstring injury. I know I don't know if Mark Andrews was dealing with hamstring as well. I don't know. There's been a lot. I feel like all I've been hearing is hamstring injuries. So this week was kind of bad fantasy-wise. We had some terrible quarterback play. We had some terrible tight end play. Hunter Henry was the top tight end this week. He scored 14 points. What? So, there were some bad. It was a down week in general for the most of the fantasy football league. But on a good note, we did have this one cat in our league that scored 124.16 fantasy points, earning himself the Alexander Hamilton $10. That is me, your boy, the commissioner of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League, Jason Peck. So I feel bad for all of you because this is just how the season is going to go. I'm going to destroy all of you. This is my shot. I'm taking home that trophy at the end of the year, and you all are going down. So that's my shot. That's my called shot. And now we'll look slightly more in depth at the matchups from Week 1. Let's do it. Last week's head-to-head results. That's right, boys. We're going into the last week fantasy matchups, and to start off with, we'll do mine and your boy Adam Stove. Or no, not Adam. I'm playing Adam this week. That's why it's on my mind. We got 2 Herbs and a J versus my Metcalf Hurts, which is Neil. And Neil, unfortunately, you got destroyed by 40 fantasy points. I scored 124.16, and you put up 84.5. Now, you did have some good games from Austin Eckler, who dominated this week, 24.4 fantasy points. That was one of the big fantasy games. There were 70 real football points scored this week, so that made for a good fantasy week. But really, nobody else on your team did well, and you ended up, kind of had a rough time out of Drake London. He was, wait. Oh, he goosed you. He only had one target, I believe, for 0 catches. So that was a rough day for Drake London. You also had Greg Dulcich, who you immediately dropped after this week, although he did get hurt. So, all sorts of injuries, like I said, this first week. I mean, nothing, well, I said there weren't too many, but there were some. But yeah, unfortunately, everybody else in your team just kind of was a dud. Even Jalen Hurts only had 12 fantasy points, so 12 and a half, I'm sorry. So it's kind of rough. On the other hand, I had a few good games, especially from your boy Christian McCaffrey. Woo, woo, woo. Him, and then also Aaron Jones, who had 25.7 fantasy points. He outscored Christian McCaffrey, 24.4 fantasy points. And then Justin Herbert, I mentioned that we had a bad week for quarterbacks. However, Justin Herbert and a couple other players had really good weeks. So I was just not lucky, I guess, but good with my quarterback decision. And then Chris Olave got me 15 fantasy points, which was pretty good as well. So not terrible. I'm just happy that, Garrett Wilson didn't goose me after after Aaron Rodgers left. I'm glad that he got me some fantasy points. And I got some points on the bench, so I'm feeling pretty good about my roster this year so far. We'll see how that progresses, but I'm not too concerned. Well, I shouldn't be concerned. I was the top scoring player of the week. That's right, boys. That's right. All right, we're going to move on to the matchup number 2, which was Ridley's Roulette, which is Adam's team, versus Osaquan UC. And Ridley's Roulette took the victory into his grasp, 86.72 fantasy points to Benaya's 79.52 fantasy points. Now, neither of you guys had massive games from people. Mostly, actually, both of your wide receivers, both teams' wide receivers played pretty good. We had Calvin Ridley on Adam's team putting up 20 fantasy points. Amon-Ra St. Brown did pretty good, 16 fantasy points. On the other side, Benaya's team, we have Stephon Diggs, who put up 21.2 fantasy points, which was like, a third of your fantasy points. So both of you did have gooses as well. Oh, we got another flock flying over. We've got a goose from T. Higgins and a goose from Dallas Goedert. I was going back and looking, and it says T. Higgins is off roster, and I thought you dropped him, but then I remembered that insane trade that you guys pulled already this year. But yeah, wasn't great games from the quarterbacks. Dak Prescott for Benaya only scored 6.32 fantasy points. Jared Goff only had 14.2, so not great. Not great, Bob. And then, everybody else, like I said, it was kind of a mediocre fantasy day. So Benaya had J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, in his roster, so he was going to have to figure out what to do at the running back position. Although he did start 4 running backs, which he was worried other people in the league would do. But so I guess he's got some room to move things around. So, yeah, I mean, I think there are better days ahead for both of these teams. Like I said, it was a really bad fantasy week in general. All scoring was down, so I think both of these teams have opportunity to bounce back. However, like I said, Adam's not going to win this week, so maybe he'll bounce back week 3. I mean, you did win, so but you know what I mean. It was a bad scoring week. You just wish you got more than 86 fantasy points. You still got the W, but you know, it was bad. On to matchup number 3. I forgot I had a transition noise. So, matchup number 3 was the 2 lowest scoring teams of the week. We had my tight end Ertz when Eifert versus a Chubb in my Butker. That's a good name. I like that name. And a Chubb in my Butker, which is Chad, took down my tight end Ertz when Eifert, Aaron, if you didn't know, even though that was his name all last year. 70.28 fantasy points to Aaron's 69. Nice, 0.34 fantasy points. And outside of Patrick Mahomes, Aaron didn't really have very many good scoring players this week. Patrick Mahomes put up 19, which is fine. It's not great. Joe Burrow, on the other side, only had 3 fantasy points. And Nick Chubb and Tony Pollard did pick up the slack, though. Tony Pollard had 21.2 and Nick Chubb had 14.7. And everybody else was in single digits. Like the rest of this matchup was in single digits. So not very good matchup at all. Like I said, hopefully the scoring increases. It makes things more fun for fantasy football. When things happen, you get notifications that your players are doing well, all sorts of stuff. But, we're moving on. Matchup number 4, we've got Team Go Clifford versus Let Brandon Cooks, which is Courts, of course. And Let Brandon Cooks did score 87.54 fantasy points, and he took down Team Go Clifford 77.26 fantasy points. Once again, this was low scoring, so we only had Bijan Robinson for Courts putting up 17.3 fantasy points. We had Devonta Smith putting up 14 fantasy points. Justin Fields only put up 14.5 fantasy points. On the other side, Lamar Jackson put up a dud, 6.56 fantasy points, which hurt a lot of people, including me. Don't tell Neil I said that in another league. And then we had Ramondre Stevenson with 11 fantasy points, A.J. Brown with 11 fantasy points. Like, just not good all around. No gooses in this game, so that's good. But overall, Isaiah likely messed up your matchup if you played him. However, Brandon Cooks... Let Brandon Cooks was able to overcome that. Not Brandon Cooks himself. He only scored 3 fantasy points. Let's move on. Matchup number 5. We've got Mix and Match versus Jerry's Kids. Mix and Match, of course, is Ryo this week. My rival always. And it turned out that way because going into Monday, we were very close in fantasy points. He had Josh Allen, and I still had Garrett Wilson, and who else did I have? Garrett Wilson, and I had somebody else in that Monday. No, I had somebody in the Sunday night game. I don't remember. CeeDee Lamb. I had CeeDee Lamb, that was it. And so it was those two after the afternoon games on Sunday. It was CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson versus Josh Allen, and I was a little concerned. I was slightly concerned, But I was excited for Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers, and then, CeeDee Lamb was a beast last year. So, I didn't really have, I thought it was about 50-50, and we were projected as such. But Mix and Match only ended up with 113.54 fantasy points because Josh Allen only had 9. And Garrett Wilson, without Aaron Rodgers, put up more fantasy points than Josh Wilson this week. Or Josh Allen this week, so I'm stoked about that. But he did get the victory over Jerry's Kids, who only scored 85.54 fantasy points. And the only reason that Mix and Match had this many fantasy points in the first place was because he had Tyreek Hill put up 39 fantasy points. Now, nobody started Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know who had him. I should have taken a look, but I don't know who had him, but nobody started him. But the duo of Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill would have put up massive fantasy points this week. But yeah, I mean, Ryo is definitely the beneficiary of 40 points from his from one player, so that's nice. He did get a goose from his kicker, who didn't actually play on any team this week. So I'm not even going to give him a goose because he didn't even play. So and kickers can score 0 all the time. So who knows, But everybody else on Ryo's team didn't do so hot, except for ETN, who got 18.9 fantasy points. That's a pretty good week. David Montgomery had 13 fantasy points, but everybody else was just kind of meh. Just gave him enough to bolster up the point values to get up to 113 and get him the win this week and the second place scoring trophy. But like I said, if you ain't first, you're last. So on the other side, we have Trevor Lawrence, who put up 17 fantasy points. So we have Justin Jefferson leading the way with 19.5 fantasy points. And Jake Elliott, like I said, kickers, man. 17 fantasy points last week because he had, this week he had the 60, plus 60 yarder. But he had two field goals over 50 yards last week. So that really bolstered his score. But it wasn't enough to get the victory. Let us move on. All right, I don't have the waiver wire segment that I usually do, and I can get back into it if you guys really want me to. See what the waiver wire best scoring waiver wire lineup is. I can do that. Give me some feedback. Get in the comments if you want the waiver wire team that would kick all of our asses. But I didn't have that prepared for this week. So we're going to move on to next week's matchup predictions.
I can see the future! I have to stop you from destroying my race! In the future!
We already did that.
I knew you'd do that!
That's right. We have our matchup predictions for next week. And we already have a little insight into all of the matchups because this is Friday, so all the Thursday players have already played. But we've got two Herbs and a J versus Ridley's Roulette. And Ridley's Roulette has a 14-point start for this week. He had Jordan Addison playing on Thursday night. That was a mistake, though. You put him in your flex spot, which is never a good thing. You don't want your Thursday night players in your flex because that makes you less flexible for the future in case somebody gets hurt on a Friday practice or, before game time somebody gets ruled inactive for some reason. But anyway, you got 14.7 fantasy points out of your flex, so that's not terrible. We're right now projected at 0.3 points apart. We both have 109, and you're at 0.46, and I'm at 0.11. So it should be a tightly contested game. I do have Aaron Jones, who is questionable this week. I don't know if he's practiced today. I know he didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. And then Darren Waller's questionable, but he should be playing. They gave him a rest day on Wednesday, and he was limited on Thursday. So it says he should be playing. So yeah, I might have to replace Aaron Jones with either Khalil Herbert or Kyron Williams. But we will make it work, and I believe that two Herbs and a J will be winning this matchup. Matchup number 2, we've got Saquon UC versus Mix and Match. That is Benaiah versus Neil, and right now, Benaiah has an 8.6 point head start. He played 2 players though on Thursday, got him a total of 8.6 points. He got 5.2 from Dallas Goedert and 3.4 from Alexander Madison. Kind of a rough start. Mix and Match is projected to win by approximately 6 fantasy points. But he does have DeAndre Hopkins, who is questionable this week. He wasn't at practice on Thursday, and he didn't practice Wednesday either. I don't know. He's got an ankle injury of some sort. Pat Freiermuth was limited at practice on Thursday. So he should be in, I would think. Just looking at these rosters, I do think Jamar Chase bounces back for Benaya, and he's got Stephon Diggs. And Brandon Ayuk, who might be the one in this offense. You never know. So I actually like, despite the fact... Now I'm rethinking myself. No, I think, unfortunately, I have to pick Ryo for this matchup. I have Ryo winning this matchup because I need a competitor. I need somebody to compete against to be the number one in this league. And I think since I'm going to win week 2, I need Ryo to also win week 2 so that we can cement our rivalry in the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame. So that is what I'm going with. Mix and Match is getting this win. Matchup number 3, we've got a Chubb in my Butker versus Let Brandon Cooks. And Cooks they are. They have a 43.2 point head start going into the weekend. We had Devonta Smith putting up 21.1 and TJ Hawkinson putting up 22.1 fantasy points. And that is just a massive boon going into the weekend. You got to feel pretty good about that, folks. You know, putting all these fancy do-gooders in your lineup on Thursday night, because they did do good. So I think with that boon going into the weekend, plus I think Justin Fields is going to have a comeback or a bounce back against Tampa Bay. I think they're going to try to use him to run a little bit more. We got Bijan versus Green Bay, which might be a tough matchup. We've got Dameon Pierce versus Indianapolis. Breece Hall versus Dallas might be a rough one. That might be, but you can't sit him after what he did last week. So, on the other side, we've got Joe Burrow, Nick Chubb, Jahmyr Gibbs, which might all be good games. We got T. Higgins, who should bounce back. He had 8 targets last week, but no catches. Terry McLaurin is kind of a rough start, maybe. Not sure, going into Denver. Luke Musgrave, your boy from Green Bay, going against Atlanta. We got Cam Akers and Kyle Pitts in the flex. We're putting Kyle Pitts in the flex? Holy cats. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Let Brandon Cooks for this victory. Courts is going to win. Sorry, Chad, but you put Kyle Pitts in your flex, man. All right, matchup number 4. We've got Team Go Clifford versus my Metcalf Hurts. And my Metcalf Hurts is off to a good start with Jalen Hurts winning last night versus the Minnesota Vikings. He had 25.22 fantasy points. Put him off to a good start, despite the fact that Jalen Hurts had 25 fantasy points. A.J. Brown on Team Go Clifford only had 4.9 fantasy points. So essentially they're starting off with 25-4 line going into the weekend. One is a quarterback, one is a number 1 wide receiver. So right now, my Metcalf Hurts is expected to win 104.73 to 98.28 fantasy points. So that's a tight line going into the weekend. We have a questionable Austin Eckler. He missed practice on Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll see if he plays. You do have his backup, Joshua Kelly, so if Austin Eckler's out, then Joshua Kelly should be good to go. Honestly, worst case scenario might be if Austin Eckler is playing, because both of them, you wouldn't know who to play. I mean, you'd probably play Austin Eckler, but Joshua Kelly might get some more work in there. Let's see, who else do I like? Josh Jacobs is probably going to have a good game. DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Cole Kmet, Kendrick Bourne, and Rachaad White in the flex. On the other side, we've got Mike Williams and Dalvin Cook in the flex. This is on Team Go Clifford. We got Evan Engram, Devontae Adams, James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson, and Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a bounce-back game. I think Ramondre Stevenson is going to have a good game against Miami. Because I think that's going to be I think that's going to be a surprisingly high-scoring game, that Patriots Miami game. So that should be good. I think I'm going to go with Team Go Clifford to win this matchup. And matchup number 5, we've got my tight end Ertz versus Jerry's Kids. Jerry's Kids, indeed. So we have Jerry's Kids got off to a pretty good start this week with Justin Jefferson scoring 19.4 fantasy points and Jake Elliott scoring 11 fantasy points. So you have a 30-point head start going into the weekend. You're projected to win 112.21 to 98. In this matchup, we got Trevor Lawrence versus Kansas City. I think that's going to be a big game. I think that's going to be a lot of fantasy points both ways on both teams there. We got Najee Harris. We got Kenneth Walker. I don't like those running backs, honestly, although Kenneth Walker got a lot of the work in week 1. But he doesn't have an offensive line right now. They literally all got hurt. Deebo Samuel. We've got Mark Andrews, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk. I don't know that I like the rest of your team outside of Mark Andrews, Justin Jefferson, and Trevor Lawrence. So let's look on the other side. We've got Patrick Mahomes on the other side. Ooh, matchup. In real life matchup and also fantasy matchup. Miles Sanders, Isaiah Pacheco, Jalen Waddle, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jacoby Myers, Travis Kelce. I tell you what, if Travis Kelce plays, I think that my tight end Ertz when Eifert wins. Although you do have Jacoby Myers, who's doubtful, still in your lineup, so maybe check that lineup and swap out. Oh, you have DeAndre Swift on the bench. Too bad. You could put in maybe Jerry Jeudy or something like that instead of Jacoby Myers. I think that might be a better play for you. However, I think if you swap out, all right. Two conditional. If you swap out Jacoby Myers for Jerry Jeudy, and then Travis Kelce plays, I would have you winning. If Travis Kelce does not play, or you don't swap out Jacoby Myers, I have you losing. Yes, that's it. So that is I don't have a cut and dry winner or loser. I think this week, if Travis Kelce plays and Jacoby Myers is swapped out, I think I pick my tight end Ertz when Eifert. If any other thing happens, if Travis Kelce doesn't play or if Jacoby Myers is out, if Travis Kelce doesn't play, or if Jacoby Myers is left in your lineup, I think you lose. That's the answer. So it's a 50-50. I'm sorry, I hate to end the episode on that, but that's how I feel about that. So guys, baby edition. I tried to consolidate a little bit better, just going into the matchups, just doing a little shit talking here and there, and I think this is how it's going to look going forward for the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast. At least for now. We'll see if we end up getting back into a time when I can get some people on and maybe improve the show a little bit. I like the consolidated times. I think that's a good move, I think, on my part. It works for me. There's less there's not much editing in general, but there's less going into it, and I think you guys prefer a shorter episode probably because it's a little bit easier to listen to in one go, and it doesn't take up an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I think this is how it's going to go. But guys, I'm so excited that fantasy football is back and that regular football is back. I love football so much, and I'm just stoked to win the championship this year. So peace, guys. I'll see you next week. See you guys.